So I am delighted to be moving now into our fireside chat session. I see here Keisha Shahaf has joined us, and I'm seeing a phone. I'm not sure who the phone belongs to, with the name Samsung SM A055F SSF. If you could please just rename yourself or say who you are to make sure we have not forgotten you're in the right place. We really would like to know who this person is. Yes, please, please, please rename yourself so we know who you are. Keisha Shahaf, let me introduce her as I move her to the webinar. And Mindy Howard. Keisha Shahaf and Mindy Howard are joining us for our fireside chat. And we are talking to two people who have actually gone to space. It is so wonderful. So where do we begin? Mindy Howard, let's start with you. So everybody who is listening, this session is about hearing from people who actually travel to space, their impetus, what brought them to space in the first place, and then more about their journey. So Minnie, let's begin with a little bit about your background. Just 2 sentences, where you're from, and what is your first memory of why you fell in love with space? Please unmute.
Thank you. Before I say that, I just want to say I haven't been to space yet. I've been close several times. So so we could talk about that, but I have not yet been to space. But I have had this dream for the last 53 years when I fell in love with a television character called the $6 Million Man. I'm embarrassed to say. But nonetheless, he was an astronaut. I was in love with him, and I thought I want to be with him in space. When you're 5 years old, you don't know what's real and what's TV. So that's my story anyway. And I think that essentially sort of got me thinking about I want to go to space, and then have spent my entire life pretty much trying to get there in a number of different ways. I'm originally American, from New York. I'm now living in the Netherlands. One of the reasons is because I tried to become an astronaut with NASA, got very close down to the last 200. Then that didn't happen, so I became Dutch. So then I tried to become an ESA astronaut and a whole bunch of other things in between. I've been asked 4 times by other people to train them, coach them, and get to space. And then for one reason or another, like the pandemic, it didn't happen yet. So, but I have a couple things in the pipeline, and I'm hoping that it's going to happen in the next couple of years. I'll just say that.
Well, certainly, we would benefit from your training and your long-standing push to be an astronaut, because I personally am moving in the space of analog astronauts and trying to develop an analog astronaut community that involves people from the global south, in Africa and the Caribbean. And so we're blessed to have with us Keisha Shahaf, who had the opportunity to go to space as the Caribbeans. I'm going to say Caribbean because I'm not going to just give her to Antigua. Yes, okay, she's Antiguan, yes. But the Caribbean's first citizen astronaut went up with Virgin Galactic. But Keisha Shahaf, please tell us what is your first memory of your interest in space? Please unmute.
Greetings to everyone. Thanks for having me here. It's such a great honor, and to meet all of you, and to meet you as well, Mindy Howard. Really a pleasure. For me, it's always been a childhood dream since as far back as 2 years old. I can remember. I've always been looking in the stars, looking for the aliens. Anyhow I can get to space, I've been, trying. Fascinated from the beginning when I heard of Neil Armstrong, the first man to the moon, Apollo 11 mission. And as young as I was very much present with that, very much into superheroes and the whole Marvel films and you know, like just that imagination. How can we explore more? I never saw just Earth as home. I saw everything as home, like all of it. But not realizing it was not the easiest task to say, okay, I'm going to go to space. It had so much to go behind of it. NASA was the only one that you would hear of as a child who's taking people to space. How can that happen? It was really impossible. So, you know, life goes on. But when that remarkable moment came where I saw there was an actual chance that I could go to space, when I saw this ad pop up, winning 2 seats to go to space. And Richard Branson came to my house and said, "You won, you're going to space. You won 2 seats, not one, but two." And I'm like, that means I can go to space twice. But then my young daughter says, "Mom, if you're going to space, I'm going with you." And the joy that I felt knowing that my offspring, my child, would want to do something like that. I'm not the only loony one that wants that, you know. So having that experience of going to space was out of this world.
Wow.
Thank you so much. So, Mindy, let's talk a little bit about the training process, because training to be quote unquote a professional astronaut versus Keisha, who I don't think had a very short span. We're going to hear the difference, right? Because as we both know, and we all know, Blue Origin certainly is trying to perfect the art of space tourism. And that, for women in particular, has created a sort of a firestorm. But Mindy, first talk about, in training to be a professional astronaut, what are some of the things you have gone through?
Well, I think there's, you know, nowadays the lines are very blurred between what is professional, what is commercial, what is, I mean, you know, we know what a NASA and an ESA astronaut is, and we know the training that they do. And on the other end of the spectrum, you know, there's no law that says that, except for doing emergency egress, that a Virgin Galactic or a Blue Origin astronaut has to do anything else. Like they don't have to do centrifuge training and parabolic flights, but it's a good idea if they do. But there's no law that says that. So then it's up to the individual to decide, like, hey, I'm going to space. Maybe it's a good idea to train myself physically or mentally. And I'm kind of training people who have the insight, but don't have, you know, they don't have to go to space. They don't have to train to go to space. But now, like this group that I'm going to be going with, I hope in the next 4 years, Titan Space, they've asked me to be their trainer and go with them on an orbital mission in 2029. Now, this is kind of like the hybrid version where these people don't have any training at all. They're not, you know, they don't have any kind of military background, and yet we're trying to get regular people who might have all sorts of issues with mentally, physically, hopefully not too big, but we're trying to say, okay, you don't have what it takes, but we're going to try to make you have what it takes by doing training. And we're going to work with you to get those skills. So, and push it as much as we can. If somebody obviously doesn't have the right qualifications, or there are some issues that will disqualify them, then they're not going to fly with us. But at the same time, you know, we're trying to help more people get into space instead of deselecting people like NASA and ESA does. You know, with NASA and ESA, if you can't pass certain tests, you're out. With us, we're going to try to work with you. But again, you know, there's up to a certain point. So it's a kind of, the whole landscape is changing with respect to training and what's necessary. Typically what we say on these kinds of short-term suborbital space flight is like the holy trinity or the trifecta of astronaut training, which is getting a feel for high G training, which is in the centrifuge, where you'll feel like what it's like to launch and have reentry back into the Earth's atmosphere, learning how to do breathing techniques. The second is the parabolic flight. So that's learning what it's like to float in microgravity and how to navigate from point A to B. And underpinning all of this, the mental preparedness training, which is the training that I've created, inner space training, which can really help people stay calm and focused enough to be able to try to have, for example, the overview effect happen, which is a pretty tall order when there's only 4 minutes of weightlessness, to get people to stay calm, relaxed, and to be able to be in a state where this can happen. Because 4 minutes is not a long time. There's a lot of things going on all around you. All of a sudden, you need to sort of like be in a Zen mode instantly, and then see if you can have the overview effect happen. So personally, I believe, that is a tall order for any commercial astronaut to have, who wants to experience this. But if they kind of prepare themselves ahead of time, you can at least learn how to call up that calm, focused feeling when you want to, after practicing this for I would say about 6 weeks. And then no guarantees that it's going to happen, but you're at least in a better place that it will happen if you've practiced that, how to call that feeling up. If you've not practiced, then I think most people will not get really the overview effect, because it's just so much things going on all around them, people's legs and arms in the way. It's tough. So you have to kind of be able to kind of ground yourself individually, be in your own little bubble. And then if you're there, hopefully you're lucky enough to experience something like that.
So before I bring Keisha on, let me just explain for those of you who are new to the conversation, what is the overview effect? The overview effect is the title of a book that's written by Frank White. And I actually had the pleasure of being in a recent conversation with him in a podcast about some of the spiritual and ethical questions we're going to have to answer in the human family as we talk about space exploration. And it's about the feeling we get of oneness with something bigger than ourselves from space. And I'm going to say to you, I've had that feeling and I have not gone to space. So I don't know if it was just a divine intervention to pull me into what I'm doing today, that I really believe that there is a planet without borders, that we understand that the universe is expanding. And so we, if we're to save ourselves from self-destruction as a species, have to get people to understand, if we're going to be a space exploring community, we cannot take the military warlike personalities we have on Earth with us to space. So Keisha, you have been, I think, as far as the Kármán line, that famous line that is a border. And might I just add that the Jamaican American mission specialist that flew the last test flight before you flew on Virgin Galactica, Christopher Huey, also, I would say, is to be recognized as another Caribbean person who played a role in the Virgin Galactica experiment. So, Keisha Shahaf, tell us more about your experience actually of having the overview effect.
Well, the overview.
Well, before we get to that, just walk us through the day of your training protocol. What did you have to do? You heard what Mindy said, what the people who are training to be astronauts now by Titan will have to do. But what did you have to do as somebody? You heard the news. How many months was it before hearing that you were chosen and when you actually went? And what did you do in that time period before that day when you actually went on the spacecraft?
So first of all my life, I've been training myself to be an astronaut, just in my lifestyle, eating well, exercising, mind training, meditating, breath work, all of that was always there. And I'm so happy that I've practiced all of this before going to space. In 2021 is when I won the seats to go to space. I found out I was going to go to space. And in 2023 is when I went to space. Training started immediately after winning, maybe 2 weeks after I had my first call with the doctors from Virgin Galactic. And they said, welcome, your training officially has started. So every month we will meet and have consultations. What are you doing with your life? Teaching about the craft and all of this. Now, when we found out when you're actually going to space, the dates that we were going to space, that was really last minute. And it was very rushed. When I said very rushed, it was okay, we're actually going to do this now. Let's game face on. Let's get things together. Flying up to New Mexico, where the spaceport is, and going into the simulation trainings, the G-force trainings, and just to build muscle memory. So we had to every day do the same routine put on the space suit, how to get in and out of the craft, how to put on your safety equipment, putting on the parachute, putting on the headgears and all that kind of stuff. So it was very intense and very, it was serious. You knew that you were on a serious mission. Now, prior to that, now what we were doing, I was actually working with a psychologist because I wanted to work with one, not because of going to space, but handling the fears that I had with public speaking and dealing with the media and that kind of stuff. I felt like, okay, I'm worrying about that. That's taking away from my experience of actually going to space, and I didn't want that to interfere. So I requested that. So I had a beautiful woman from Jamaica who was training me with that for the past 2 years prior to going to space, which she did a phenomenal job because I was able to come out of my shell and feel more comfortable, not worrying about what other people are thinking, how I'm, relating. So just the mindful exercises of breath work so I can be calm. So how to handle that heavy boost as well because of the heart. You can actually pass out because of the blood flow and all of that. So how to squeeze and keep that blood going up to your head while you're handling that heavy G forces. The G force training was fantastic. I really love that high speed. I really crave it again. My biggest worry was that, okay, we're going to do this, but I'm going to want more, right? And so said, I'm trying to see how can I get back to space again. I'm really ready to go again. But the thing is that eating as well, making sure we had to pass the FAA test, medical exams, to know that, hey, your body is fit, you can actually do this, which I don't even think that it's really a big requirement in that case, because we did have one of the other crew members, John Goodwin. He had Parkinson's. He was the second person to go to space with Parkinson's, and he was able to handle that. There was on our mission, we have a chief astronaut who's on board with us in case anything happens. She can assist, so she was there to assist him with seat belts and stuff like that. So really, it's okay in space tourism, even if you're not 100% with health, you still can get up there, which is amazing. I, on the other hand, now I wanted to feel like I'm actually having the real experience where I'm healthy, I'm meeting all the requirements and this type of stuff. So it worked really good for me I had to fly up to London, where there was a doctor there who was certified to qualify if you can pass these, fitness levels and so on. So I passed all of that. And then the classroom training as well. We had chief astronauts, we had the chief engineers, and all these top edge people who are highly professional in the craft building, telling you about what's going on. It's a technology where you're air launching, so you're going up to 50,000 feet, and the mothership is going to release the spacecraft where you're going to start the engine from 50,000 and blast you straight out to space. So you had to understand the backgrounds about that. If something happens, if for some reason that engine doesn't start, how you're going to get off very quickly. There's one little hatch where we practice how we would escape, who goes first, who goes second, kind of like that. The parachute is automatic, so once you jump, it will automatically do what it's supposed to do, and you can get back down safely. Luckily, we didn't have to do that because the mission was successful. We made it up to 290,000 feet. So we went from 50,000 to 290,000 feet in just 1 minute. We acquired that. We went up to 3.5 max, which was amazing. That boost that just threw you back into your seat, and you're not supposed to move because you're trained at that. You can move your eyes. So, you're moving your eyes and you're just watching the different colors as it shifts from the blue going into that deep purples and into that black, that pitch black. So, you understood all of that. I had many questions once I came back because I didn't go from a science background. So I was making notes, from a non-science mindset. Okay, so why does it look like this? Why does the sun look like that? What's that line going from the sun touching earth, So the training, in my opinion, it continues even after space and coming back because you have all these questions. So I'm very fortunate to be in touch with all these amazing astronauts, especially the women I empower women a lot through, you know, what I do. And, you know, they're willing to answer any questions that you have, which is beautiful. So the training is very important, you know, so you have that 5 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes in space, which is, it's not long enough at all. But, you know, like even if you have 2 minutes, it's still like if you're, you will still have the effects, even if you were there for a month or more, you know, because of that cognitive recipients where you're pulling it all in. And what I find happen is that maybe I may not have remembered or I didn't think I was as present in that few moments, but glimpses, like little patches of it come back to me even today. And like, oh, that happened. I saw that. But, you know, maybe in the moment you don't remember you saw that, but somehow later on it just comes back, and then the tears just comes out, the emotions just comes out. I saw this, I experienced this. And so I'm just journaling and bringing all of these notes with me. So it doesn't matter if it's 5 minutes or one month. I feel like that effect is, you know, it's very profound, it's very transformative in that whole overview. So the overview really affected me very big when it came to the love for humanity, because there's three major experiences I had, which was peace, the feeling of peace, like this complete peace that you feel when you're in space. I'm very happy I didn't have to work when I was up there, because I feel like if you were working doing experiments, maybe it could pull you away from that. So I feel like it's so much advantage just going up there as a tourist, where you know you can just be present, especially as a Buddhist, as a person, you know, of my status that has been practicing Buddhism for so many years, just to be there and just to like feel that peace, feel that love and the interconnection. The first moment I realized the interconnection was with the crewmates on board. Like suddenly I felt connected to the astronaut pilots, the chief astronaut, John Goodwin, because we were the passengers, the three of us, John, myself, and Anna. And I just felt, I mean, Anna is my child, so obviously I feel that for her. But it was a different connection, kind of like, even if she wasn't my child, I felt like there's no separation in us. Like, where did this separation came from? So it's almost like the body disappeared, but it's like a cognitive, like a, I don't even know the word to say for it, but it was like a mental thing, like a consciousness thing. Like we were just sharing one consciousness, and then it expanded outside of the craft with the earth. And it's almost like you're talking to the earth, you're talking to the moon, you're talking to the darkness of the cosmos and the sun. And then coming back on earth now, all of a sudden I just felt that love, peace, and connection continue towards everybody. So it's like the ego just drops, and it's like you have everything besides that ego. So the more people that can go to space, it doesn't have to be science, you know, connected. This is how we're really going to be shifting in our planet too. So I feel so much more determined to be a part of the space, to how we can get more people up there. Just so that, I mean, if we can get that experience on Earth, that would be much better. But there's something that really does change inside of you that makes you more intergalactic, more connected, and it's just peaceful. So that was my experience with the training. The training was really about the breath work, mental awareness, being centered in yourself so you can be focused, the physical and health, how you're eating, nutrients. I had to do a lot of blood tests. My only issue was my red blood count was a bit low, and I had to bring that up. So, but define any little thing that's going on, you will pick it up and you will know, okay, start working on this, you know? So by the time I went to space, everything was well balanced. The diet, the muscle training, just to remember, you know, like how you're supposed to take off your seatbelt, how you're supposed to get back into the seats. Because when you're in zero gravity, your body doesn't work the same as if you were, not even when you're diving, because I'm a dive master. So I was practicing, my weightless practice was really under the sea, doing diving. And I still felt weight on my body from diving. You felt no weight on your body from being up, you know, in that zero gravity. So it's really a bit different from my experience. It's really different. And you know, so but your muscles are still working, so you're holding and you're rodeoing yourself back into your seat, and it's just effortless and it's beautiful and just light like a feather. So yeah, that's that.
Thank you. Some housekeeping. If anybody has any questions and you're online, please feel free to raise your hand. If you're in the room and you have a question, we do have a working um, technology here that you can ask questions through. And Mindy, you may also have questions for each other. Please feel free to do that as well. So I want to ask Mindy a question. So having heard Keisha's experience, and I have to say that Space for Humanity, which was part of the group that's helped to sponsor Keisha's trip. I, like Ari, also serve on an advisory board there. So we are very committed to continue to build out the diversity of experiences. And really, when we talk about raising funds to send 1 or 2 persons every year, we're now wrapping our mind around how do we actually expand that number? Like you said, it's very expensive to raise 300,000 to send somebody, 1 person on a seat or 2 people on a seat per year. And there's so many people wanting to experience things. So we're now thinking, how can we expand? And so Mindy, as you're hearing Keisha and your own experience training and now being a trainer for Titan, which has a very bold vision to be really engaged in broadening access by designing systems that are more reusable and returnable and recyclable. And hearing what we're trying to do in Africa in terms of building out an analog astronaut community, prepare Africa to have a seat at the table. This morning we had a slight conversation about should Africa do astronauts or only do space for the SDGs? I'm of the camp that Africa should do both. We need our version of an Apollo program for countries in the global south to have a seat at the table. As you're hearing all of this, and as a trainer now for Titans, how do you think your training might allow for to borrow somebody like Keisha's experience to bring to your network and for us to bring that to Africa? Because as a Caribbean person, I'm thinking, hey, we have something to offer. We have Keisha.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I would just like to say, like for Titan Space, the P and I might add, I'm also one of the things I'm really involved in is also I'm a CEO for Cosmic Girls Foundation. So I want to sort of answer the question with both of those things in mind. So with respect to Titan Space, I think there's a lot of different types of training that can be that can be done. There's different ways to prepare yourself. Some more NASA ASA-ish than others. There's team building. There's individual training that you have to do for yourself, like this to have that calm focus. And there's different ways of doing it. Just to give an example, it sounds like Keisha has been doing a lot of breath work beforehand. And I'm using, for example, within her space training, technology. So a lot of people can't meditate. They have difficulties, but I'm using technology, which is using a brainwave entrainment device that can be purchased for a few $100s. For example, you put it on your head, you listen to it like you're listening to headphones for 30 minutes. And it's kind of like meditation on steroids. You can get the same kind of meditative brain of a Buddhist monk who's been breathing and doing meditation their entire life in a 6-week time period. So it's really weird how technology can actually sort of try to speed things up. There's nothing wrong with the old school technique. People use it all the time and it works, but it takes a longer time to be able to get proficient. And so there's a lot of things out there where people can start to get the benefits, for example, of being a long-term meditator and not have to be a long-term meditator. So that's some of the stuff that we're using. I wanted to say Titan Space is basically also taking people who have had this dream, and I would say not necessarily always, it's not like they're the best of the best. They're individuals with a passion, and so I want to sort of say for people in Africa, this is still available if you are interested in becoming an astronaut yourself and you're passionate. there are other ways to get to space other than, you know, having an agency like NASA in your country. There are other, and as well as commercial for girls, cosmic girls. You know, we're trying to get more girls because of the numbers being terribly low, and the fact that there's going to be this talent gap very soon. Trying to get more girls into the picture, and we want to have as many girls join us to get upskilled in a number of different areas, which we're giving free training. We're giving eventually free astronaut training to 6 lucky people, and then a flight to space. So there's many different things that are around now that were never around even 5 years ago for ways and people to get into space. And it's getting familiar with what's out there. And the techniques, for example, like I just mentioned, you know, in terms of doing astronaut training can be done at home using, you know, let's say this brainwave entrainment tool. So, but also analog missions out there. It's a way to feel like an astronaut, and, you know, experience some of the difficulties. And you can be doing that. You can do that now virtually. You don't even have to go to some places. I mean, you could do it in a place, or you could do it virtually. If there are these like MMRs, MMAARS, one of our partners at Cosmic Girls are giving girls the opportunity to do these things for free. And normally people don't have to, you know, it's not for free. So if you look, it's out there. You got to go and get connected, and you can find a lot of stuff for free, and get more and more feeling of like, what's it like to be an astronaut, even from the privacy of your own home. So you need an internet connection, though, I must say. But aside from that, I encourage those to look around and see what's available, because there's a lot more out there.
Yeah, you know, we're picking on somebody who got involved in the analog astronaut community from 2 perspectives. In my fantasy life, I consider myself the first Jamaican on the moon back in 2035. So in my fantasy life, which is like about 15 years out, I've already been.
You're already
unfortunately,
there.
Unfortunately, I do have some challenges. I'd have to get fit, right, Keisha, and I'd also have to get over my fear of flying. So there's 2 things I have to work on. But I do think that
I can help you with this second, by the way. I can help you with your fear of flying. Go ahead.
Yeah. So we can think about the idea that analog astronaut, and to answer what you're saying about the need to broaden the people's ability to see themselves there first. Because for us to make it, I really believe that for us to make it as a species, space is our answer. And there's some people I'm associated with that have SDG 18. We call it SDG 18, the Space Sustainability and Space for All SDG, which doesn't exist in reality, but it exists in our little group that call ourselves the SDG 18 Advocacy Alliance. But in the UN Summit for the Future, which happened last year, there's one paragraph that deals with space. And it was pretty vague because there's so much complexity around the geopolitical and the traditional ways of thinking about space, and this idea that we have to have the military industrial complex be what it used to be in the future space. I really believe that the more people, like regular people, like yourself, like myself, like Keisha, like the others who are very active in various analog astronaut movements and other space sustainable movements, if we're able to partner with private sector actors that also have the same belief system, we might be able to stave off a full-scale militarization of space. I'm not saying it won't happen, but I think we can dampen the impact of that, because we do not really want to have a Star Wars in reality, right? It's not what we really want to have. We want to have a star piece, right? And so to do that, we have to be intentional about not only wanting to be astronauts, but who are we going to become? And this is where this feeling of oneness, the reality that if you are in a spacecraft and you have unethical behaviors, you're not going to make it out alive, because you have to work as a team. So let's hear a little bit about that. Mindy, as you're training, because you're going to be very active, and Keisha has signed on to ensure that as the Space Futures Forum, the practice that we have is very focused on Africa, the Caribbean, Pacific. Just kind of signed on to support the analog astronaut training, which I actually launched one for Africa this year. We had our first cohort do the first 4 weeks. And then we're going to actually, we had some of them go out to the destination we have chosen for our first mission. And let me just say, plug in case you're watching this, World Space Week this year is living in space. So Mindy Howard, I'd like to talk to you about, after this call, about what can we do together with you as a Titans astronaut to let us figure out what can we do collectively to amplify this conversation about living in space.
I would love that.
Because we're working on something. And then the week after that, the world's biggest analog, the analog astronaut community, which now has a journal, a research journal. They now have created standards to which we're saying analog astronaut training camps have to aspire to achieve, because we know a lot of people are coming on board and claiming they're doing this stuff. And we know a lot of people are not really honest and ethical. And we want to make sure that people who actually want to do this are being treated fairly, their money is not being taken in a bad way, right? So we want to make sure that we who are really believers and are setting some standards. But it's a beautiful thing, it's coming from the ground up. It's we the people are doing this. And so I'm really excited to see the breadth of people that are involved in the Titans industry. And I'd like to hear more from your perspective. How is it going to be in terms of the, let's say, the intellectual and other challenges beyond the physical? All these different cultures, all these different perspectives of what humanity's future in space is going to be. Are you including futures dialogue? Because I'm a futurist, I'm very focused on this futures conversation. This, are we using the words colony, settlement? What is the new word? Because people are very uncomfortable because of the history of colonization of words like lunar colony and lunar settlement. Right now, our group is working with lunar reserve, right? Or preserve, right? What is happening in Titans? Have you begun to think about those issues?
Not yet. That's a little bit, I think in the coming years, we're going to need to think about this, because the first flight is really just orbits around the Earth. And then the next thing after that is the space station. And the next thing after that is the lunar habitat. I won't say the word colony. And then the next thing after that is Mars. So it's funny. So I just wanted to back up in the Cosmic Girls world, because we have a lot of girls who want to who have the dream to be the first on Mars or in the first habitats and things, and they're talking about, you know, what they're doing and how they'd like to design it. I mean, personally, you need to. I don't want to go to Mars and make the same mistakes there that we see here with respect to everything from colonization to the patriarchy to a number of different things. Like, I don't want to have to replicate the same thing. I think we need to have a completely new paradigm shift. And it was funny because last year we were pitching, Cosmic Girls was pitching SpaceX, and we wanted to say, you know, we think that basically the first people on Mars should only be women. And here are the reasons. Here are the reasons why. Not only because the female body is better apparently in you know, not getting the negative effects as much as the men do, but you know, they're typically they eat less, they take up less space, they take up less water when they exercise. The female body is more efficient and doesn't get cancers as much. So and then you think about, in terms of building communities, who does that best? It's typically women. And to think about, like, wouldn't that be cool to have, you know, to start in a completely different way, and then after you know, we could start with only women, we could introduce men and indoctrinate them into a different way of doing things, a more collaborative way, not a hierarchical way. And so that was what we were pushing. It didn't fall well, I think, with space and Elon Musk, but it started to get us really thinking, like, but it actually does, from a commercial point of view, even make sense with all the money saved from just even saving like 25%, eating less, taking less space makes a big difference to think about, like, if money is an issue, why it makes complete sense just to send women. So we have been talking about it and thinking about it differently. We haven't had that conversation yet with Titan Space, but I'd like to. And I think there are some real, points to think about and address, and opportunities not to use kind of the old model, and all the things that came with that, and all the exclusion that came with that, for years, both for people of color and for women, for the last 60 years. And I have to say, I don't want to get political now, but things don't look really good in the States, with this climate. So I think we need to kind of get out of that mindset and think like a blank slate, and what could we do? What's positive, and how can we really, make things fair and equal for everybody, and, regardless of who they are, and not have the old mindset, that, is still around very much and alive and kicking in the space, industry. So, there are plenty of opportunities. We just got to get more voices in the room.
So, Keisha, what are your thoughts on that? This idea of a woman first approach? Do you think it would sell? But beyond that, as somebody from a small island state which doesn't have a space program, right? What are some things you think those of us who are from small countries, plus Africa has several large countries that don't have space programs, and even if they have space programs, they're very much focused on space for the SDGs. What are your thoughts as somebody who's actually gone to space but understand the reality of governments and nonprofits and private sector in the Caribbean, in Nigeria, in Ghana, not seeing the relevance of what you're doing, not seeing the importance of what your experience was? How can we, I guess, use your voice to help create a mindset shift?
That's a very good question. And I do believe that we got to see it in a way where it's not non-political, because we do have leaders in our communities, people who are very interested in the space, that whole space exploration. We have strong minds, education, and, like, just to give people a hope, what they can look forward to. So I do know that I do bring that image, when it comes to that, myself and my daughter, and, Christopher Huey, and, other leaders, pioneers in our Caribbean. But we just got to get to the people, because the government represents the people, right? So if the people are showing this is an interest, then they would have no other way but to deliver to the people what they want, right? So I do believe that we have to also turn inwards, because space is not just what's outside of us. If we want to make a better humanity, if we're thinking of going to Mars, or, like what Ms. Howard was just saying, is that we don't want to bring that same problems outside of Earth, because we're the biggest destroyers. We're the ones that's destroying our own selves. We're the ones that's destroying our planet. And all this big talk that we're having right now about saving the planet, planting trees, looking at our soil. What about looking at ourselves, looking inwards? How did we get to where we are now? Planting 2 trees or escaping the planet is not going to save anything. What's going to save is really our mindset, how we are. We're pointing the fingers all the time, but there are 3 fingers pointing back at you when you're pointing. So how can you look at you as a person and make yourself better? That's what I'm doing. I'm just looking at myself. I'm constantly working on myself, working on how can I make myself better. That's my obsession. How can I be a better person for the benefit of all humankind, not just for the benefit of me? We have to think collectively. Again, that 3 emotions that I experienced in space, I feel like that is my foundation right now for living. Love, peace, and connection. And that's what I'm going to continue talking about until I take my last breath. And that's my contribution to mankind, is that we got to look into ourselves. We got to look into whatever we're doing is not for us. It's for the whole. It's for the benefit of the whole. We can't be greedy anymore. We can't be selfish anymore, just grabbing and taking. How can we give to each other? And that will be my voice for the Caribbean. And I would really love to see our own space port. I would like to see our own spaceships going up there. I would like to see our own engineers and bringing all of that together as a whole as well. I'm not saying that you just to go to America, that's where we're getting, access to go to space. We need to have access all over the planet globally, not just America. What if America closes its doors tomorrow to us? How are we going to continue, this space exploration? So we got to look at other platform, other places, landmark in our planet is quite big, even Ghana, maybe even wherever, what I'm saying. It's how can we bring this together that we all can do this collectively? So that's my view on that.
Thank you. We have a question from someone in the room. Okay, if you could unmute, the floor is yours. Could you unmute for him?
All right.
Sounds like someone's on 2 devices.
Actually enjoying it.
Good morning. Thank you very much for this insightful section. My question will be directly targeted towards Keisha, but I'd like to give a background before I ask my question, very brief background. As someone who is very fascinated about, should I say, I believe that aliens exist actually. And I heard Keisha talking about that when she was young, she was somebody that was fascinated about space. She believes that aliens and let's say beings exist outside of the earth. So my question is, what mindset or perspective change did you have after your visit to space? And the reason why I'm asking this question is a lot of persons, or should I say Africans, or I've come across some persons who believe that, the idea of space travel and the rest are just conspiracy theories and that they don't really exist, that some people are just out there feeding us with lies and the rest. So what changed in your perspective or mindset after your visit to space? Thank you very much.
Excellent question. Thanks for asking this question. What I would, sorry.
All right, please go ahead.
What I feel like it's the biggest thing that changed for me because of going into space.
Okay, please go ahead.
Is fear, letting go of fear. I had so many things that I was afraid of. And I realized that fear can control so many thoughts that comes up in our mind, creating so much illusions and making the fear even bigger. And what I can say is when you experience something for yourself is when you actually know. It's very easy to get pulled all over the place from conspiracies and all of that because of fear. And it just creates a mess inside of your mind, and it gets worse when another person can feed it with information that's not even true. So you have to ask yourself, did that person experience that, who is saying whatever they're saying? So when I let go of fear because of that experience that I had, anything could happen. I remember when I had to sign a paper to say that if something is to happen to me going to space, like to leave a video just in case I don't come back to people that I love. That just opened my eyes right there. I'm like, I'm going on such a mission that it's a possibility I may not even come back. And to know that I went beyond all of that, that was a fear that could have held anybody back from going. But I went beyond that. And because of my curiosity, my wanting to know and wanting to see for myself, got me through that threshold, that barrier. And I got there and I saw. And what was most remarkable for me was that love and peace that I felt. and made me realize that we're not separate from anyone out there. Whether it's an alien, whether it's an earthling, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. What matters is that we're here, we're present right now, and we have a choice to just be in that space of love. If you choose confusion, then you're being out of fear. But if you let go of fear, those are the three biggest emotions that you get to enjoy, which is love, peace, and connection. So I feel like if you can just like release that veil that will take you there, then you would see that there's no reason for you to get into the conspiracies. Like, I really don't even talk about conspiracies. I don't entertain any videos on that. I say to myself, if it's not factual, someone actually experienced it for themselves, I don't even want to hear about it. If I haven't experienced it for myself, then I can't talk about it. So I'm not going to talk about something I have not experienced. I can speak about seeing the planet from 290,000 feet because I experienced it. But if I never experienced it, I wouldn't be speaking about it. I can probably quote words that somebody else experienced it, and I could say, this person has experienced, and this is what they stated. And then I know I'm passing on information that's factual. So I don't get into the conspiracy and the make-believes and the, these things that can go on into the mind, because the consciousness is so powerful. You got to be able to train your consciousness not to go overboard, not go over the limitation, not go over the marker where you just lose it. So that if my response answers your question, I hope it did. But yeah.
I have a comment here in the chat. I see that both ladies stress the spaceflight training. I thought of that and now have EU and Korea patents on an assisting breathing, hard-shelled, liquid-filled high-G spacesuit. Mindy, you are more active in the science side, I think, with Cosmic Girls. Do you have any take on where spacesuits are going? I mean, as Titans prepares, and I mean, Cosmic Girls, I know is not doing the science of it. You're doing more the education of it, but still you are more in the science research space. Have you heard any astronauts in training also talking about that, or somebody who has actually trained to try and be involved in NASA and ESA? Have you heard anybody in ESA starting to talk about new potential ways of having spacesuits which are now modern? Because so much has happened in material sciences and AI and sensors, etc., from the first spacesuit.
Yeah, I mean, you have different issues with spacesuits. It's not my expertise, but I can talk a little bit about it. Just starting from back in the days of, actually it wasn't that long ago that Christina Koch and Scott, who else was with her when they had their first female EVA, and they couldn't originally do this because they only had suits that fit men on the space station. So spacesuits and have had issues in terms of inclusion for a long time, men, women. But I see Howard's question is also he added to allow less fit persons to go to space, and these are things that we're going to have to be thinking about if we're going to be starting to have less fit people going to space. Typically a lot of these things are kind of made for a particular size range and not necessarily for the individual. But I think we're going to have to start thinking about, having bigger sizes, having sizes that, if somebody is not able to push the blood into their brain, that they have, these are spacesuits that are pressure suits that will help individuals do that as well. And so we need to start to think about kind of designing around the person versus shoving the person in a suit and saying, here, try to use this. Because those days I think are now becoming over, and when places are when we're having people like in Titan space, having all sorts of diverse individuals that are going to be going into space, these are things that we really have to think about. Of course, there's costs involved, and and the more individual you make it, the more expensive it's going to be. But maybe there can be a lot more variety in what is on offer in the coming years than what's been on offer in the past, which is male sizes, small, medium, large, and that's it. So, yeah.
Yeah, Keisha, describe to me the spacesuit that you wore.
So my spacesuit was really made from like a denim cloth, kind of like a cotton heavy kind of fabric. But the spacesuit that the craft that I was in was more is what was designed to protect us while we were out in space. The spacesuit was, you know, it was pretty nice, the way it was designed, you know, with all the labels, the tags and all of that, and some great padding to protect us from when we were in the equipment, the parachute, you know, so the way it was designed was really for that, comfort for being in the seat. The seat was specially designed for us as well, custom designed. Each spacesuit is yours. It was custom designed for you as well, to fit your body. Special pockets that you can put things in. If you're in research or whatever, you have things to put in your pocket, you can do that. For me now, I wasn't in research, so I took sentimental things that was very easy to stuff into those pockets to say, hey, I took these to space. So yeah, so it's not like you're doing spacewalk where you're going out in that, you know, so the spacesuit is really just for your comfort while you're in the rocket ship.
Got you. So the big things that we see are for people who are doing EVAs, and
Yeah.
apart from that, it's more a flight suit. Well, Africa has some fantastic tailors and fabrics. We're planning to do for World Space Week a flight suit design competition, which we launch in August, an African flight suit design competition we launch in August. And we're gonna have the fashion show for World Space Week, living in space. Let's see what we'll be wearing on the lunar reserve. She's killing me up. Let me see, I think there's another question or answers. So the principle is to, similar to fighter pilot partial suits, where their legs, he's just explaining how it works. This hard shell liquid fill high speed J suit allows less fit persons to go into space because the legs and liquid fill pants. Thanks, Howard, for that insight into how these designs are. Well, it's really good that people are thinking about the future of space and making sure that we have more people being capable. I think we have more or less come to the end. I don't see any open questions. Any questions? I have no more comments. Are there any final remarks, Mindy, that you might want to make? Mindy Howard from Cosmic Girls, and I see you also in Blue Abyss, and you're also in Titan. So you're well-rounded astronaut training. We have to borrow you for Africa too. A matter of fact, our motto is, you cannot do Mars unless you have done a mission in Africa, because that's where you learn to be really isolated and really in remote, harsh conditions. Because when you're out in the field in Turkana or in Navronga, Ghana, at the borderlands of, Ghana and Burkina Faso, there is no hospital that you can get to within, 1 hour. So unlike other analog astronaut camps that are, more or less in sophisticated places, you're going to really understand if you have the mental capability to be in space when you have survived, knowing that the nearest hospital, the nearest thing is at least going to be a helicopter or helicopter right away. And helicopters are not on site. They have to come and pick you up. So therefore, it's a tour right away. Can you bear with the knowledge that you will be that distance? Because I think isolation training is something that is very important. Also, being in contained spaces is also important. And I believe it's one of the things that Africa has to offer. I think that the nomads, for example, who have always lived in very harsh conditions, their mental ability to withstand being in vast space with no computer, no gadget, no connection, are things we can learn from. And so we're hoping that our camp and the research we'll do by participating and working with indigenous people who live in these spaces will also inform lessons learned and how they cope, how they manage. For them, it's the norm, but I think we can benefit from that, so that we're doing our space astronaut training recognizing that there are people who do live in ways very similar to those who plan to go and live in these new habitats, in these untamed spaces in ISS or on the moon or in the future in Mars. But Mindy, Howard, if you could give your closing remarks.
Sure, it would be my pleasure. I think I'm excited about how space is no longer just for the elite few. The democratization of space is actually, about is having new perspectives, new possibilities, new pioneers, and I want to make sure that women, especially from underrepresented regions, are part of that future, not as a footnote, but as leaders. And so I'm excited to be sort of expanding my own personal mission to the mission for getting other girls and women and getting them to imagine what is possible, and especially from regions like Africa and places that's been underrepresented before in the past in space. So for me, becoming an astronaut means claiming your space in the cosmos and helping others do the same. And that's for me what I'm all about. And if I can help you, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or on social media. It would be a pleasure to connect and talk about how you can get yourself to space.
Thank you. Hisha Shahaf.
Yes, for me, space is about not just the outer, but also the inner space within ourselves. And I'm very much open to expanding in the mind, expanding, connecting to your heart, knowing what your true desires are, healing from habits and patterns of the past that's holding you stuck from acquiring the things that you really dream of. So whether it's going into space, what is holding you back from that? What are the limitations? What are the mindset that you're holding? What are the thoughts that are going on in the mind? What are the habits that you're cultivating that's creating destruction in your body, the breakdown of your cells, your health? And so it's very important, the things that you're saying to yourself, the things that you're doing, the actions. So space exploration for me is for all of us. All of us are welcome to it. It belongs to all of us. It doesn't belong to one person. And the more that we can get inwards and really get to know ourselves, is the better we can in expanding in the outer, exploring more with that. So that's my work. That's what I'm doing as a wellness coach, helping, and I'm staying with the whole space. Space is not getting rid of me. I'm going to be here for, as much as I can. Thank you for having me on this platform, and thank you so much.
Thank you, both of you, Mindy Howard and Adad Ogaba. I'm going to answer his question. Exclusivity has been the main ingredient of space research. As I know, nations of the third world, or let's call it global south is the current term, are not financially buoyant to embark on space research. How can space become more inclusive? And I'm going to answer that in my closing remarks. First of all, space is becoming more inclusive. We see that our Artemis Accords, certainly for Africa perspective, now has 3 African nations that have signed on, and Nigeria is a signatory. Ghana is Nigeria, Rwanda, and Angola are signatories. We see that more and more African nations are creating either space commissions or space working groups. So even Malawi, for example, that doesn't have a space program, has now commissioned a working group or task force to begin to look at establishing one. We know that Cote d'Ivoire has already won the opportunity to build its first CubeSat, and the government already has the documentation to Parliament to build out a space center, a space agency that's already in the works. So we're seeing the moves. The question then is there research dollars? Our philosophy at the Space Futures Forum is to really use a frugal innovation approach. I think we ought to learn from the experience of Kenya, in the young people in Kenya that said, hey, we can make mobile when it work. And nobody told them they couldn't do it. Or even they're told that they couldn't do it, they went ahead anyway and did it, because we have been talking about this idea in the West, but because of they had the legacy systems, they were not able to move to mobile money as fast as Africa, who didn't have, they had more people unbanked, and therefore they're able to solve the problem faster. So my suggestion is to people who are from Africa who are saying, well, we don't have this and we don't have. Look at what you do have. You have a lot of young graduates who are actually underutilized. I think if we have enough challenge questions and enough opportunities for hackathons and innovation prizes, you'll be surprised, because either because they've been told they can't do it, that turns on a thing in your mind, because people who looked at me as I was crazy, what you doing trying to start a Caribbean Space Society? What you doing trying to do work in Africa? Who are you to come and tell Africans what to do? And I said, oh, what? You're telling me I can't do something? Well, let's see about that. So that turns on some people. And those of you who have never been told no, fantastic. You don't know any better, so you're going to go ahead and try to design it anyway. There's so many unschooled, untutored innovators in Africa that have built things that I believe that by existing, by creating this thing called Space Futures Forum, Space Ungana, Oaseas, I am going to be able to identify myself and the team of people who have now beginning to join. We now have partners in Kenya, we have partners in Ghana, and I hope to leave Nigeria, where I'm sitting today, with partners in Nigeria, to really build out this ecosystem that is going to allow us to have the collaboratory that's going to support, as citizen scientists, what the Africa Union through the Africa Space Agency is trying to do. So please let nobody on this call who is African believe that because you don't, quote unquote, have money, it can't be done. We have universities which are underused. Even the resources you have are not currently being used. So before you go stretching out your hand for more money, what are you doing with what you currently have? Are you using it to the max? And then more money will come because you've used what you have to the max. And so those are my parting words. Thank you so much, both Minnie Howard and Keisha Shahab for joining us. And we are grateful. And folks, thank you for listening. And we're going to take a break for lunch and be back at 2 p.m. Take care. Bye-bye. Yeah. So that's it, folks. We have come to the end of our morning session on this, our third day of our Futures Forum segment. For those of you who are online, tomorrow we will be around, but we're going to be doing design work, working on our AfghanSat project, our Oaseas project, and our metaverse education platform and decision-making support platform. But the day is not over. We have, in the afternoon, we're going to hear about new ideas in rocket launching and all sorts of things. We're going to hear from ShaktiSat, the mission to bring, to build a satellite that will circumvent the moon, being done by a small NGO out of India. And of course, we're hearing from more people from the analog astronaut community about the research and plans they have to do space differently and with inclusion and equity and justice. So I see you in an hour. Until then.